I'm JD, and this is Modernist Guide to Popular Media. Maybe, hopefully. Dune is really good. The end. No, it's all the parts that you, I think, want from Star Wars without over expecting the wacky goofiness. It's just that's gone. And then it's the stoic, drawn out parts of Lord of the Rings. And the book was written in 1965, so about 10, 15 years after Lord of the Rings, and 10, almost 15 years before Star Wars. Everyone's going to say Star Wars pulled from Dune, and everyone thought Dune was going to be just completely and utterly impossible to adapt. And without it being kind of wacky sci-fi like Star Wars, which the David Lynch one, that's what that is. The David Lynch Dune is its attempt at doing Dune in a Star Wars style. And if we had ever gotten the Jodorowsky Dune, it would have been even more Star Wars, but Jodorowsky. Jodorowsky would have done just like Flash Gordon level wackadoo shit, and that probably would have been fine too. But it's none of those things. It's so much more like um, Lord of the Rings. It is a fantasy novel. Like if you've ever listened to it in an audiobook like I have, or read it, or attempted to read it, then that's what it is. And so people thought it was unadaptable, like Lord of the Rings in that way. All the politics and the layers of lore, just the droning on and on about the people and their existence, whether it's House Atreides or the people of Arrakis or the Harkonnen. But now, since then, we've had Lord of the Rings adapted way after the David Lynch Dune. And then we had Game of Thrones. It's gonna feel Game of Thronesy to people. Um, Aesthetically, though, it's realistic. It's comprehensive in what 60 years before where we are now for this new Dune. Instead, think about when it was written in 65. And for that reason, Denis Villeneuve, I think, is what he always wanted to do that. He didn't want to do a Star Warsy version. The part of Star Wars is the loud, violent clatter of opposing forces. But everything else is Lord of the Rings. Everything else is politics and philosophy and ideas. And if you don't like that, you're not going to like Dune, because it's all that but sci-fi future. Villeneuve does it by the book. It is an extremely faithful adaptation, but I think a lot of people wanted it to be vibrant and colorful, or those who were expecting it just got super disappointed because they were expecting a better budget version of the Lynch one, and that's not it at all. There's actually an HBO series right now by Ridley Scott called Raised by Wolves that I would say stylistically is that kind of hard sci-fi that you compare. If you want more of Dune, you should go see that. But this version is a huge setup, very fellowship style, establishing an enemy, establishing a problem, someone important getting Boromired, ending with everyone traveling to the next destination. It's part one. It starts as part one. It tells us it's part one. They should have just gone ahead and filmed a part two. It's pretty cowardly by Warner Brothers to not do it and just like accept it. And I understand that it probably took them a lot of effort to allow Harry Potter to do that because it was the final book. But this is the first book, and they just had to do it. And they've been trying desperately to find their next Harry Potter series for a decade, and they have it. It's just sci-fi, and people have been ingrained for years because of how seriously they take Star Wars and how not seriously they take everything else, assuming that it's ripping off Star Wars. You look at John Carter, that should have kept going, but Disney isn't gonna make mistakes. If they do, they sweep it under the rug, and so it's gone. But we should have a June and a John Carter and a Star Wars all existing at once together in different films because they're different interpretations, and that's a problem that a lot of people are going to have forever, is that they assume that we shouldn't have those three things all at once. We shouldn't have variations of similar stories to exist at once. And then you get to pick and choose, or you can go see all of them and then be happy as could be. Like, we accept the comic book model. Disney has brainwashed us into being okay with it, and I'm actually totally fine with it, but I also see what it is. But the fact that we can't apply that to other genres or other niches of film or styles of storytelling in film is pretty sad. But this is everything that I was expecting from Villeneuve, which is, I think, all that matters. If you've seen Arrival, if you've seen Blade Runner 2049, it's that, but more and grander. It's the best I think we could have had because it is grounded. It's a grounded, hard space epic, and it needs to be. It's not super fantastical in the traditional sense. I think a lot of people wanted color in different ways, but honestly, I'd say the color palette, people want to pretend to be super smart and say that it's slanted down and it's devoid of color. It's very similar to Mad Max Fury Road. It's just not as orange. It's not heightened the other way. It's heightened down, but it's the same painting esque. You just gotta look at like storms, painting of storms or landscapes, and that is what we have. It's just a different palette. Doesn't mean it's not colorful. It doesn't mean it's not grandiose or vibrant. But that comes down to like what type of colors you see, which you don't have to be colorblind or red green colorblind or whatever to have a different variation of what certain colors look like to you and more appealing. But that's going to be a hurdle if you want it. It's a lot of setup. It's a lot of really, really good acting. Timothy Chalamet really surprised me. Everyone else, though, was doing their thing. Honestly, on final notes, you just have to be ready for a lot of setup and understand that there has to be payoff. There has to be. And it's no one's fault except Warner Brothers if there's not. And there should be, and it deserves to be because it's painstaking payoff. This definitely should have been an HBO Max series, though. There's clearly 4 episodes right there already set up. You could have fluffed it out more. This is 2 hours and like 25 minutes. And it's $165 million budget. And so if that means to do a full adaptation of book one in a 10 episode series was going to cost them like $500 million, they should have just done it. I don't know what they're afraid of and why that they're so reserved, because like if they don't take risks, people aren't going to go. And they really need to just, they also need to be forthcoming. By not saying that this was part one, they're going to alienate a lot of people, and that also sucks. But you should definitely see it if you just want something in between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah, you're gonna notice similarities, but it's a good in between. I think it's still a little too quaint and slowed down in Fellowship, and you can throw a dart blind at any of the Star Wars. Any, doesn't matter the value of good or bad you think they are. They're all the same compressed level of forward, loud, flashing motion. And it's nice to see a hard sci-fi epic control that. Again, John Carter almost did it. I'm sure Disney was really mad that John Carter didn't have a lightsaber of some sort. But for the most part, this is the sci-fi you want if you want a world confident in itself and everything that it does. And yeah, that's it.